Hello, and be welcome to the world of darkness. Long ago was it that the sin of Cain spawned the cursed horror that stalks the street at night in search of living blood. The kindred have long been a secret influence through all ages of human history, plotting against one another in a never-ending jihad. Their immortal progeny are among us to this day, hidden from the eyes of humanity by an elaborate masquerade. Vicar Thomas O'Connell. As you enter into the Westminster Abbey, where each sound is simultaneously amplified by its vastness, yet muffled, almost as though by its own holiness. The many lights which illuminate its interior, even in the late hours, provide a peaceful, if somewhat somber home. Even at this late hour, there are several parishioners sat in pews or at the votive camp, and several holy men who preside, speaking in corners, whispering between themselves, or going about their duty responsibly. Younger men are cleaning, older men are overseeing. Throughout the entirety of the church's interior, there is not a single lazy bone among them. You can hear the faint murmur of prayer intermingling with the conversation of several pastors. It is a very quiet and peaceful place, not often disturbed by much else. How do you proceed?
Out of character, do I know anyone here at Westminster?
You do know some. In fact, Breckenridge occasionally comes by.
Okay.
Whether or not Guthridge would ever come by, it's debatable if he has cause or is some. And there are a few others.
Can I sense this aura that I am supposed to be finding a way to circumvent?
No, not in any real way, honestly. Despite what is described to you by your domitor, as you walk the halls, there is a sense of serenity which comes over them. And yet, a part of you, and this is relatively new, does feel a slight sense of guilt and shame. Can't help but reflect on things that you've done, particularly since joining Enlightened Society of the Weeping Moon, that make you uneasy.
I will raise a... So am I standing in the middle of the chapel? Or where am I?
You're inside, but everything else is very much up to you.
Okay. I think the first thing I will do is walk over to the partitioners and see if I can overhear what they're talking about.
As you venture near the parishioners, you can hear several of them murmuring prayers on God, forgiveness of sin. Asks and pleas to look out for relatives, kin. There is one woman who sits completely silently on her own, her curly black hair falling just above her shoulders, as she looks about the place with almost vacant light blue eyes. Her similarly blue dress is probably the most colorful in the place. Of the parishioners, she's the only one who doesn't speak or pray.
Interesting. I would make note of her. Perhaps I'll approach her later. Or now. Sit down on the bench next to her and say, I hope I'm not disturbing you.
Looking to you, she gives a very hollow, no. No. She seems to come a bit more to herself as she looks at you. After all, you have more right to be here than anyone else. At least of those of us that use.
I'll look at her and say, it's God's house. We're simply just guests at the moment. No one truly owns this place. Might I ask, what has drawn you here today?
I don't rightly know, Father. I came to dutifully pray, but I can't find it in my heart to do so. Forgive me my blasphemy. I don't wish to pray. I wish to condemn him. For once again, he's taken. She rubs a hand over her stomach.
Out of character, I assume I know what she's referring to. The loss of her child.
Perception, empathy. It's a good assumption to make from what she's expressed, from what she said, but you can't quite be certain. And it could very well be that, though you do get the distinct impression if you were to make such a statement and it turned out to be wrong, well, in other words, it's a gamble.
Ah, I love those. I always fail them. I would look at her and say, I understand your pain. Perhaps not the exact same pain, but we've fought more than most. I say as I look around, whispering, speaking in a low voice, saying, I lost my family when I was a small young one. I've been with the church ever since. And since then, I remember the first few years, it was hard, tragic, wanting to blame, well, the universe, God himself, for why do bad things happen to good people? Say as I give a sympathetic look to her plight.
Then you understand a portion of my pain. She rubs her stomach again. How do you keep your faith, Father, in light of wicked men and tragedy? How do you not lose faith?
Take a moment to think about that before I reply. I presume that there is a reason for all this suffering, that there is a greater plan that neither you or I can possibly fathom. And while some things are taken from others, it is eventually paid back in kind, either in this life or the next.
You recall the story distinctly. You didn't spend all those years in the library for nothing. You've practically many of the passages and a lot of other things related to the religious text into your mind. You could damn near quote it word for word. In fact, you could if you really wanted.
And God looked to Satan. Look here at my servant Job. There is none on earth like him. For his devotion to me is unswaying. And Satan said, does he like you, or does he serve you because he is truly devoted, or because you allow good things to happen to him? What would happen if everything he owned turned to crap? He would curse your name and then die. Out of character. Rough translation. Anyways. So God allowed Satan to test Job. First, Satan would take his children away. Then he would inflict horrible diseases on him. And then finally his wife would leave him. And Job held firm in his love for God, even when his wife told him to curse God, for he has forsaken him. And when finally Satan relented, God repaid Job's kindness tenfold, or repaid his devotion tenfold. Job on earth was gifted many children and vast amounts of wealth. And he was taken care of for the rest of his days. I say as I look to her and say, just because it is dark now does not mean there is not a brighter point.
Charisma and expression. Let's see how well you can sell it to her, considering your lack of personal conviction.
Can I use a reroll on that one?
If you like.
I have to spend a willpower, right?
Mm-hmm. Inclining forward, she rests her hands on her face. I don't know what to do anymore, Father. It is not Satan who punishes me. It is not God who tests me. And yet I find that I live with a man who is a Satan. I know it says in Romans to not seek revenge yourselves, for vengeance belongs to the Lord. But what do I do when this man takes everything from me? This man who I'm supposed to call my husband.
I will put my hand on her back in a comforting manner and give her a pat and say, out of character. I will say simply, we're sometimes not always blessed with having the right spouse. Even in the Bible, it says that it is okay for a woman or man, should their partner be abusive, to walk away from a rough relationship and seek safety with family or friends until such a point where reconciliation can be made.
She clutches to your shoulder suddenly, her nails biting through the fabric. I have no family. None. And I begin to suspect he had hand in that too. I am beside myself with what to do anymore. I sleep in fear. What am I supposed to do? I don't want reconciliation. I want retribution. And none is forthcoming.
I look to her and I say, if you were to leave him to go 1,000 miles away, would he still find you?
She looks away, her shoulders trembling.
I look to her and say, if he has cheated on you, and you have not forgiven him, you can petition the court for divorce. I look around and whisper under my breath, there are places in the church where we can send someone who desperately requires protection.
Glancing up at you, she licks her lips, considering. Her head tilted to the side. She averts her gaze before asking. And what price might I have to pay?
I'm wondering if I can... No, that would not look good for a deacon... for a viscount to shelter a woman, take a woman into his housing that is not his. There's another man's.
It depends on very much the reputation of that vicar. And ultimately, it's up to you what to do.
I look to her and I say, well, there are two options, I say as I put my hand on her shoulder and continue to speak. I have a small congregation in Highgate. I'm sure if I asked around, there might be a man or a woman or a family willing to take you in for a short period while you find arrangements elsewhere. There's also the nunneries. While those require a bit more devotion, it would get you out of your house from your husband.
She seems to consider your word.
My suggestion would be, if you're going to leave your husband, you do it when he is not at home. Pack very little, or pack only the essentials, and do not mention it to anyone.
That would be no easy thing, like Father. The house servants.
I'd make a mental note to ask her more about her husband.
You're getting the impression he is a wealthy man.
Yeah, I'll look to her and say, either option is viable. Honestly, if he laid a hand on you or has lied with another person, you could, once you're separated from him, file for divorce, and it would be accepted in the eyes of God.
Then men are more cruel than God. I would be a woman disowned. Even with reason, how would society look upon a woman who abandons her husband?
I look to her and I say, if you were to start somewhere else again, who would know? And what is it for society to judge when only you have gone through your situation? What happens next, or the only person able to judge us, is the divine.
Clutching her own shoulder tightly, she pushes herself up from the seat. If I may, Father, I will think of what you have said and return here when I have considered my...
I look to her concerned and say, Might I know your name in case something were to happen?
Nina. Nina Chambers.
Well, Nina, I am Father O'Connell, and I will return here in exactly 7 days. This spot, and I will sit here for exactly 4 hours from now. If for some reason you miss me, for some reason you're delayed, I have a place in Highgarden where you might be able to reach me. Just look for the church.
She inclines her head softly, and then leaning in very closely, she gives a very soft kiss on your cheek before excusing herself.
I wait a good 3 or so minutes after she's left, and then I get up and go back to what I was doing.